Welcome to Whole Lot of Wolves, episode 31 of season 4. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley,
I'm Paul LePage.
producing from New York City, Mr. Alex Patakis. How's it going?
Good. Hey.
And on the socials in Baltimore, it is Danny Paletti. How's it going, Danny?
Good evening.
Well, and our special guest this week, he is fresh off his first trip to Molyneux. And we're going to hear about that later. It is Brian Donnelly from Charlotte Wolves. How's it going,
Hey
Brian?
guys, great. Thanks for having me back on.
Yep. Well, you got to see an exciting game, that Fulham win. Thank goodness you weren't there for what was probably one of the most heartbreaking games a lot of us have seen, and that was Coventry City 3, Wolves 2, at the gun for all intents and purposes. Wolves are out of the FA Cup, just missed going to Wembley. We're gonna try and talk through it. A little bit of therapy here, guys. But Paul, there was no Cunha. We thought maybe he was gonna be back into the squad. They did bring in Doyle, had Lamina playing further up. What'd you think of the lineup when it came out?
It kind of picked itself, and you had a suspicion that it wasn't going to be good news at all when O'Neill was very coy in his pre-match presser about the injuries. So even with them lining up the way they did, I still thought they would have enough. And I had high hopes that midfield three of that's potentially where the game could have been won. Sadly, it didn't really turn out that way.
Well, it looked a little scary early on, Brian, because Jose's saw went down. They were kind of checking out his quad, his groin area. The stupid announcer, who this guy just pissed me off the whole time, basically was trying to blame it as stall tactics. But thank goodness he didn't have to come out, whether the injury was real or not, because of the fact that he was really the man of the match, wasn't he?
Oh my goodness, yeah, he kept Wolves in that. I was just pulling this up. I think he ended up with 9 saves, some of them very good. Um, one of them incredibly lucky, but yeah, he absolutely stood on his head. And without his contribution, that game would have been sewn up a lot sooner,
Yeah, I
which may have
completely.
saved us all a lot of heartache. Would have been mad, but not crestfallen.
Uh, damn you, Saw, for keeping us in the game, right?
Yeah.
Alex, it just seemed like Coventry was really looking threatening all throughout. First half, though, turned out to be 0-0. Kind of feeling, okay, little parallels to Fulham the last week, where Wolves will be able to turn it on in the second half.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I mean, I understand the parallels between, maybe underachieving the first half and being ravaged by injury and then kind of rallying around that. But I wasn't expecting it on Saturday. I was more just like shell shocked at the sheer amount of chances that were created by Coventry City. And Brian talked about Jose Saw's performance a little bit and how that was a lifesaver. Like to me, that was telling. I didn't feel like, although Fulham had a really high XG at the end of the game, it didn't feel like there were quite as many chances as Coventry had. I mean, Sims should have walked that one to the net. Like that was an embarrassing
It was
miss on
wild.
like the in like the 30. Like even some of us on here might finish that in our day. And the fact that they were, that wasn't the only really good chance that they were creating against us. Yeah, it was really concerning, I have to admit. We said last week that back three was kind of like a comfortable blanket that like wraps over you and keeps you warm and you just feel like everything will be fine. That was not the case this time. Um, yeah, my optimism was very low.
Well, it just seemed like the pressure kept coming from Coventry. And then Danny, they finally broke through on a goal that, boy, again, the Coventry announcers certainly thought that, no question about it. Danny, the goal hit his arm. So
Yeah.
explain to me how that's not a handball.
Ugh. I mean, I can't even keep track anymore. I was telling the people I was watching with it seems to me like I thought that the rule was that, if you score in any way assisted by your arm or hand, then it usually gets ruled out. But then I remembered like, oh, but it comes off of his thigh first and like proximity and all this stuff, but it's all nonsense. I mean, we all saw it come off his arm, and I think I said probably in the group text and on Twitter that it's one of those that it feels like, yeah, in theory, like that goal should stand because like he can't really do anything about it. He's sort of being pushed into it anyway. But it's also like that doesn't help me feel any better when 99% of those exact same situations end up getting ruled off. Like if that happened in the Premier League, and especially if it was Wolves, if that was coming off of Mateus Cunha's arm going into the goal, you know for certain that they're going to bring that back. It seems like they're always so cautious about giving any goal that might be ill-gotten. But then when it comes to this, they're going to give it. And I mean, we'll talk about this later, but the kicker is that they took like almost 5 minutes to figure it out, which I couldn't understand because you see it over and over again. It's like there's nothing more to see here. Like, we're all seeing the same thing on the first replay as we did on the 10th.
It's always been the case with those that the longer those reviews go on, the more obvious it appears that it wasn't a goal, and that was the case. But I even thinking about how initially the celebrations were so muted in that he kind of knew that he bundled it in with his arm and it wasn't going to get given. And there was much more passion and celebration when it actually got given as a goal than it was when it actually went in over the lines. That was what was telling for me with the whole thing. But you're right, Danny, 9 times out of 10, that's overturned. And that's not even being bitter sour grapes or anything like that. That's just the way it has been.
And to me, this is the time for VAR to work. The time for, okay, it was given a goal. You look, it's a handball. Okay. Now would anybody, Coventry wouldn't even been complaining, I don't feel like. I think they would have been like, yeah, it was a handball. That sucks. Tough
No,
call,
I mean that's
Reagan.
what's so frustrating is in some of these instances, it's the ones that you feel like especially aggrieved about it not being overturned or not getting to the eventual right call is the one where you have every sympathy for the ref not noticing in the moment. It's like, of course he didn't notice in the moment. It's just a tangle of bodies flying towards the goal,
Yeah.
and the ball ends up in the back of the net. Like that's what VAR is for, is these things where no ref alive could ever hope to make that call unless they somehow got pushed into the net themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Frustrating.
So you're forgetting one key point for We Are Wolves.
Yeah.
VAR is not meant for us.
Well, Paul, kind of facing that 1-0 deficit, O'Neill went to his bench. Wasn't a lot to go to because of the fact that we're so beat up. What'd you think of the changes?
It was like that you were seeing the subs thinking, what's he going to do here? And I'm not singling him out by any stretch, but when Matt Doherty's coming on and you're a goal down, it's just how can he impact that game? So, and I'm a fan of Doc, but not in those types of situations. But I think what it did was actually allow Outnura to have some more license, and luckily that's what bore fruit.
We had 4 wingbacks on the field at one point. That's absurd for a Premier League team. I don't know.
I didn't even notice that. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single one of our wingbacks was on the field.
Brian, it wasn't looking good. And then Aitnery found a little bit of life, 83rd minute. He capitalizes on a cross that wasn't dealt very well, and it was 1-1. How were you feeling at that point?
Oh, it's fantastic. At that point, it hit that finally things were finally going to come together point when it had been dreary, it had been drab, and I'd almost at that juncture resigned myself and said, well, bad day at the office. We're going home 1-0. I guess I'll have to move on with my day. And then that definitely breathed a lot of life back into the entire situation. And the main thing I actually want to highlight on that is that Sarabia really picked it to set that whole thing up.
Mhm.
And then he made a nice pass to Joao, and then finally get a little bit of luck. But it was fantastic to see Eight Nori at the right place, right time, and just made the whole place go nuts.
And then 5 minutes later, Hugo Bueno, his very first senior team goal. Another just fantastic assist by Aitnuri, who took over that game in the second half. And suddenly, Wolves down 2-1. I was a little nervous. The announcer said, "That's the goal that sends them to Wembley." Did you feel
Oh my
like that
God,
was
I
what
know.
it was at the time?
Yeah.
I had no, yeah. I was like, yep, that sealed it. We're done here. We can go home. Yeah, that move by Nora was tremendous. He danced through like five guys to make that beautiful pass, and there were like four other guys in the box at the same time, which we don't see that very often, especially with at that juncture. Could you actually like write out what the formation was? I couldn't. So yeah, I went absolutely bedlam in my living room.
Okay, another thing, I have to go off script real quick because you mentioned the shape there. Um, when the announcers were sitting there saying, "Oh, it just looks like they're a disjointed mess, and it's like screwing them all up. They don't know who's going where." And it's like, have you not seen this team? Like, they're always free flowing, and they have a bunch of guys injured. What are you talking about? Oh, I was so mad, Danny.
Yeah. Oh, first of all, I just want to say that between those two goals for those 5 minutes, I said probably three different times, please just don't let this go to penalties. We had so many young kids on there. I was so concerned that we're going to end up at penalties. And like, it's one, I mean, honestly, that's the only thing I can think of that would be even worse to watch than what ended up happening is having to sit there and watch a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds fail the club, in front of 30,000 spectators. That would have just been brutal. Um, but yeah, that second goal really showed. Sometimes it's hard to know what the destination is for O'Neill, what he wants the club, the players to eventually look like once he gets the right pieces in, striker, whatever. What's the shape going to be? But one thing that's been clear most of the season is that he saw the problem that we have scoring goals, and there is a clear direction to get bodies in the box. And it doesn't matter what position you play. We've seen it occasionally with the center backs, but especially the wing backs and the midfielders. We saw Lamina start to do it earlier in the season. It's just like if there is a breakaway and we have a moment to go up there, we need a numbers advantage. And if you are the furthest person forward, because turnover happens, Hugo Bono happens to be one of the further people forwards, so he races through. It's your responsibility to get in there, and that's still refreshing. I mean, when we're talking about positives, I still think even though, good Lord, those final 10 minutes or so were insanely chaotic, that is the sort of DNA of what Gary O'Neill is going for, is getting numbers in the box so that we can at least capitalize on those situations.
And Alex, speaking of all this wingback action, there's a no stupid question.
Yeah, there is from Matthew Kowalis, who asks us on X, what are your thoughts on maybe starting Bueno at left wing back, having Eight Nori at the winger position? I feel like that is our most dangerous alignment at the moment, and wonder what would have happened if we started against Coventry with that switch.
Bueno
It's
looks
a
healthy finally. I think that's a big thing, Paul.
it's a no-brainer for me just because out Nuri out of that team has got the most talent, just for everything that you can ask for offensively. And is he shackled a little bit from left wing back? Even there was that ball to Sarabia in the first half with the outside of his foot. And if Sarabia had caught that and done a goal like Spurs, then that would have stuck another zero on out near his valuation. He's got that much quality to him. But I think on Saturday, he probably looked at that lineup and thought, if they can produce what they did against Fulham, where the likes of Lamina ran his socks off and was brilliant playing out of position, they'd be fine. So there was no need to move him. Whereas Lamina, for the most part, didn't impact the game at all, and that there was very little thrust from the midfield. Where if you'd have had out Nuri as a left-sided central midfielder in that team, that could have opened up a ton. And that's not even going with that full forward three. That's having him reserved even. So I think that he's got great potential. I'd like to try and see more utilized in advanced positions as the season runs out.
Alex?
I just want to say, I mean, I had a friend text me like midweek before the game saying, I feel like this is going to be a game where Bueno plays left back and Nori plays winger, and I thought that makes absolute perfect sense. I just have to wonder if health is the reason that Bueno can't really get a game, because when we do see him, I feel like he looks okay. This is a guy who came up as a winger, so you don't really lose much offensively if he's playing left wing back. And Nori has proven that he's so dangerous going forward. Like without Cunha, Neto, or anybody except for Sarabia up front, just a second creative player up top is needed. And I know that Nori plays really high for a left wing back, but he can't completely skirt those responsibilities. So I don't know. And it also feels like Doherty gets will always get minutes before Bueno. And I just wonder why, because there's the opposite situation under Lopetegui where it was like Bueno's the guy and Nori's not. Like, I feel like they could combine well together on the left side. And I kind of regret not seeing it. So, I love Gary O'Neill. I think sometimes he makes some mistakes, and I think it was honestly he probably thought if we keep our defensive shape as is, Coventry's not going to be a threat, and eventually we'll get a goal and we'll knock one in at some point. And I think they completely underestimated Coventry and their offensive abilities, which yeah, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was in deep into injury time when Ellis Sims scored on the 97th minute. And then in the 100th minute, Haji Wright, of course, U.S. men's national guy, scored on the last kick of the game. Danny, that hurt. That really hurt.
Yeah, I was pretty much in complete disbelief. I mean, I sat through the Watford semifinal, and still this one, just the rapid fire nature of them, it just seemed like, um, and I thought we controlled the game okay during most of the stoppage time up until that first goal. So it felt like, okay, we're gonna see this out. Um, and yeah, it did not escape my attention that they spent close to 5 minutes on that VAR check, and then they uh, they end up scoring in the 97th and 100th minute. It just it really makes it a very bitter pill to swallow, and just such a bummer. I mean, both of those goals were real kind of defensive collapses. People who I think, just were maybe letting the occasion get to them a bit too much. There were kind of minor mistakes leading up to them, but then in each of them you saw players just sort of probably in disbelief, much like us, that like this can't be happening in this moment. And that's what happens when you lose focus. And part of that maybe you could chalk up to we had a bunch of kids on the field, but there were also some senior players who were kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere.
Paul, what's a worse loss? This one, the Watford FA Cup semifinal, or is there another one from back in your day that stands out even more than those two?
Yeah, nothing can ever mend this broken heart from losing to Bolton in the semi-finals of the playoffs in 95, 96 season, something like that. And it was May 17th because it was the eve of my birthday, which is May 18th. And it was just like the worst thing imaginable. Listening to it on the radio.
Good Lord.
John McGinley should have been sent off for punching David Kelly. He scored, and yeah, it was just horrible. So that's my order is still Bolton first, then that Watford game. But this one's pretty close to it all. Just seems we're in that position with 96 minutes on the clock, ready to take another trip to the Twin Towers.
Brian, what do you think? Watford or this one worse?
I will admit I had not dealt forward into EPL at Watford time. That was, I think, the year before I started following. So I had not felt that in, but this was definitely the most chaotic and and probably the biggest range of emotions in 15 minutes I have felt in a very long time over many things. And it took a very strong, concerted effort to not let it completely ruin my weekend. AKA, my wife does not stand for it when I'm a grumpy son of a bitch for 48 hours because of a dumb football team. So I
Thank
had to
God we
take a
didn't
very,
record this Saturday night.
oh my
That would
God.
have
Yes, I
involved
did.
talking Paul off the ledge. I'm
I
quite
couldn't have
Yeah.
done it. I'd have boycotted it. I'd have
I
just
had to
put
take a
like,
very long walk around the neighborhood. Luckily, it was beautiful and sunny here. So I took a very long rage walk and eventually calmed down. And I bumped into a buddy and got to talk about something that was not football for 20 minutes and then was able to like not carry it into the rest of my day. But that was, yeah, that was probably the largest gamut of emotions I've had in a 15-minute period.
Speaking
Alex.
of the way that we each dealt with this loss, I have a very, very brief story and how my Saturday went out or went down. I moved to a new neighborhood, so I went to a different place to watch the game. So I didn't have my usual
Never
Wolves
again.
neighbor
Never
that I
again.
had. Yeah.
You got to
I
move
walk
back.
in.
Yep.
It's St. Patrick's Day, so people are in it for the long haul in the day. The only other person in the bar is this guy from Coventry wearing a Coventry shirt. I'm like, you got to be shitting me.
Oh.
I didn't know these people existed. The bar, which is a huge sports bar that's like gearing up for the rugby and everything. Every single TV, because the rugby started later, had the Wolves Coventry pregame on. The internet goes out right before kickoff. So I'm watching most of the first half on my phone, streaming ESPN Plus, and the Coventry guy is like, look, no, like no other bars are open, like this is a disaster. I'm gonna go watch this in like the common space in my building, which has like this huge TV or whatever, and he invited me. So I watched the rest of it with a Coventry fan, so I'm muting my own joy when we take the lead and I think we win. And then like I can't get mad at him because I'm at his home as he wins, and he calls his dad, who's back home, crying because he saw them advance to the FA Cup semifinals once in his life, and he's like 70, 80 years old or something like that. It was insane. And I couldn't even be mad because he was like one of the nicest people ever. I just hated that he was really, really pleasant. Oh
But you're
God.
never talking to him again, right? I mean, that's
He followed me on Instagram. I saw his story today, which was like of him
blocked.
getting tickets to go to Wembley. I'm just like, oh,
right.
Blocked.
So the moral of that story is, you got to celebrate those goals. Like that guy was a ball boy who had just given you the stink eye. You really should have given it to him.
I was trying so hard to be nice. I was just like, like silent fist pumping and being and we saw it coming. Like they missed way too many chances for Wolves not to capitalize. I'm like, finally, we're on the other
Oh
end of
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, I'm like, I'm sitting in his house. I'm like, God, just get me out of here.
I will say bravo to
Alex.
you, Alex, because nothing really ticks me off more than someone being at my house rooting against my team and then celebrating super a lot. Like I understand that, when I
Yeah.
go to my cousins and it's Ohio State playing, I hate Ohio State, but all right, I won't do. And then Alabama played. I had people doing the Eyes of Texas. Yeah, Mike Moser. I'm talking about your wife. Doing Eyes of Texas in my house after they beat Alabama. No, get the fuck out of my house.
Insane. Yeah.
Alex, you're a New Yorker. You don't have to be nice.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I I really should have just I shouldn't have gone is the thing, but I was really running out of options, and I didn't have
Yeah.
TV yet because I had just moved in. Like I don't even have a TV like up in my apartment at that point. So it was a complete. Yeah, I just blame.
Wow.
You know what? It's my fault for moving. I think.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Butterfly effect. You should have rubbed salt just to really make sure.
That's right. Well, I learned my lesson.
Don't be nice to anyone in blue shirts.
Well, Paul, the FA Cup was probably our easiest way to get back to European competition. And boy, the press conference afterwards didn't do much to really help us get that. Oh, hey, we can just, make it with our league standing. What do you think was the most disappointing news after the game?
I think the Neto injury is really disappointing in that it takes away a really potent weapon for the running, really. And even to the extent that even if he does come back, and the same goes for Wang, is either of them aren't going to come in with 2 or 3 games left of the season and be at 100% to even remotely go for it, because you're not going to be risking that hammy going again. It takes time to build up and get that back with those types of injuries. So that's the most disappointing thing for me. And I'm still under the impression that it's probably the last that we've seen a Neto in a Wolves jersey. I think he'll still push for that move in the summer, and we'll have to be really creative in the way that we try and maximize some value from someone who's showing that he could well be injury prone. So whether that's a just hoping the demand is there, that they're able to enter into a bidding war, or they're getting creative with maybe a player and cash deal, or a 2-player and cash deal from somewhere. But sadly, I think it's the last we've seen of him.
So what's your percentage on that, Paul?
In that we won't see him again.
Mhm.
I'd say probably 80% that he's
80%.
gone. Yeah.
Oh, Brian, what do you think on that?
Yeah. I'm not quite as, I don't know whether that's pessimistic as that. I would probably put it more at a 60% personally. I do agree with you that it does seem like you've just kind of seen that attitude shift when he was like middle of the season, where it seemed like he was getting a little pouty when he wasn't getting the ball. Like it just seemed like felt like he was getting a little big for the britches, if you will. Like he knew, like he started to know, like, oh, I am a star and I could be on Arsenal, I could be on Liverpool. But yeah, with this, it's going to be weird between FFP finally having teeth for the first time ever, and so a lot of teams not wanting to spend a lot, and his injury record getting what we thought we would get at the beginning of the year is going to be harder, and he has a long contract. So I probably wouldn't peg it at 80% gone, but I think it's more than likely. I'd probably put it at 60. I just hope they get a good number out of it if they do.
Real quick, what's your percentage, Danny?
I probably tend closer to Paul's, so I guess I'll be slightly different, say 75%. Just because I think that um whether he plays or not, even if he just features on the bench for a game or two at the end, I think that that would be enough to signal to people like he'll be fine, especially by the time the next season rolls around. And you have to think about like the perspective of an Arsenal, for instance. So if Arsenal are coming in to buy him, Paul's mentioned previously, they might think they can get more out of him with, whatever extra that they spend on medical support than Wolves can or whatever. Who knows? But they also will think, well, he's just coming in to back up Saka. So like he's gonna get fewer minutes, and these are overuse injuries. So I don't know that a team like Arsenal are going to be particularly concerned about this player who seems to get hamstring injuries when we're playing him 90 minutes every single game. They're going to say, well, he's going to come on and he's going to play 15 minutes, or he's going to start a game and then we're going to take him off, once we've wrapped up this early, Champions League round game or something. It's just like, it's not really the same role. And so they might not be that worried. So as long as he seems good to go, I think they're not really going to be deterred. Does it take some money off of that potential fee? Maybe a little bit, but I don't know. I don't think it changes a ton, to be honest.
Whole Lot of Wolves is looking to expand its squad, so if you enjoy working in the creative capacity and share a passion for Wolves and graphic design, you could be the perfect addition to our growing crew. If you're interested in learning more, drop us a note via email at hello@wholelotofwolves.com or reach us on X at WLWpod.
Well, Brian, you made your first trek to Molyneux. Tell us a little bit about it. I mean, exciting. What should people like me that have never been there? What should we expect? What should we do? Everything. Give us the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a blast. And honestly, the best part about it was the people. Met so many really cool people. You know, how many times you're so basically, so we rolled in the morning, went to the pub. Oddly enough, I ended up knowing like 6 different people going to this game out of various networks. So like a guy I know from Raleigh bumped into him on the train going into the game. And then we went to the pub to go meet up with a friend of mine who used to live in Charlotte but just moved back. Got to meet all of his family and all of his buddies. We walked down to the match together. Due to we helped out, Charlotte Wolves helped out the Wolves Foundation on a recent fundraiser called Miles to Molyneux, and as a little thank you, the Wolves Foundation person actually got us down pitch side during warm-ups just to go get some pictures and stuff, which was super cool. Bumped into David Coppy down there, knew he was coming too as well. So it ended up being like this like really cool like reunion in a sense of like meeting all these people. And then like you're going in to go grab a pint before the match and you get that like around here it'd be like y'all ain't from around here, look. But then people's like, where are you from? And so I'm like, oh, I'm from North Carolina. And they're like, why are you here? And then
fucking plastic.
Yeah, they chat with them for a second. They're like, "That's so cool. That's awesome." Like I could tell. I was in Wolverhampton for 2 days. I'm not sure I paid for a beer the whole time I was there, because every time I was just like, "That's so cool. Here, let me buy you a pint." Like, oh yeah, like let's chat about this for a second. So we met a bunch of really cool folks. There were people from all over. The actual people right behind me in the stands were from Melbourne, Australia, and Calgary, Alberta. And yeah, so it was just a blast. And then afterwards, we went to another pub and I got to meet Stu for the first time. By the way, he is a big fan of you and he's a big fan of the show. And
you as in
it was
me
just
or
a
as in
blast.
Paul?
Yes,
or
you as in you. You as in Josh. He's a big Josh fan.
I appreciate that.
He was a big fan
Stu.
of all of you, obviously, but he was expressly very excited to chat about Josh, and he gave me a little Adama sticker.
Yes.
What was
yeah,
it like? What was the
cool.
walk up like, Brian? The just seeing Molyneux for the first time and then getting to see it in the pitch and everything.
Oh yeah, it was kind of surreal because it's so close to downtown. It's like down this little hill. And again, I've never been there. I don't really know. You look at the map and these things you can't really tell how close things are to each other. So then it's all of a sudden it's just like the whole town kind of filtering together. You just come around a turn and it's just right there. And it's just that was just so cool. There's this thing that I've been watching on TV every week for the last like 5 years, and it's just right there. Um, and you get down up and in there, and it's a little odd because again, you can't get the scale of these things from TV, but because we're used to like these NFL monolith mega stadiums, 30,000 people is a lot of people, but between the 4 stands, it doesn't seem that big once you're in it. Like it doesn't, there's a lot of people there, but it's all packed in pretty tight. So it's not like when you're standing in the middle of like Bank of America Stadium or what's the one in Houston, True Lions,
NRG.
random energy. That's right. Where it's just, 10 stories high in every direction. It's just all kind of small, which was a bit surprising. But then when it's just like the noise and the atmosphere, and like everyone is so focused on it, which was super cool. And then kind of getting underneath the bowels of it because we were in the Steve Bull lower, which is the oldest stand. So like you're trying to like get through to get a beer, and it's like the entire concourse is like 20 feet wide. So
how did you get those tickets, by the way? How'd you order them?
Through the Worldwide Wolves. So there's a Facebook group for the chairman of the various supporters club. So someone from the foundation or the foundation from the club was able to help connect us through that. So they hold a number of tickets for, outside supporters clubs, so you can buy them straight from there.
Okay. Your wife didn't go, or did she?
She did not. She did not. My college roommate who lives in London, who came with me, he actually is an Arsenal fan. I'm just gonna, but it's okay. He was a good sport about it. He didn't wear an old gold anything, but he sang the songs with me. He had a blast. he enjoyed the pubs too. But yeah, no, before we went, she asked me, like she can be a good sport about football, but she's not a fan of soccer. So I've took her to a couple of Charlotte FC games. She had fun when we didn't sit in the supporter section, but when the sports section like it's a little too rowdy for her, and she was like, "Am I going to be like, is this the evening? Am I going to be standing for 90 minutes in the freezing cold in the pouring rain with some drunk asshole yelling the c word over my shoulder for 90 minutes?" And the answer was yes, absolutely. She's like, "Okay, I'm probably going to stay at the hotel then."
And that didn't seem appealing to her.
I think it sounds great.
Yeah.
That guy was probably Stu as well. So
Yeah.
Or the pirate.
Yeah.
Or pirate buddy. What was one thing that you wish you had gotten to do that you didn't have time to do?
That's a good question. Didn't make it to the Posada, which is like this like super old timey pub right downtown.
orange chips. Any orange chips?
I did not get orange chips. That's what
Yeah.
it was. Yeah, I didn't
But he
get
had
orange
Scotch
chips.
eggs, baby.
I did have Scotch eggs, and I had a sausage roll at the match, which was really good. Side note: they gave me a pint in a plastic cup, like a paper cup. Ugh, that was gross.
American snob.
Yes, I was like looking at the beers. Was like, so do you want a Carling or a Carlsberg?
What was your favorite song to sing during the match?
They only did Gary on his Barmy Army and the Nelson Smedo song the whole time. I was joking with my buddy. I was like, well, all the other players we have songs for are hurt. That's why they're not singing any of them.
Yeah.
Which actually
Cunha
that's
is still
what
my
prompted question
favorite this
last week.
year.
Yeah. No, the Smedo one was good. That's been stuck in my head for a solid week. Because you need a song that has a good F-bomb in it that really helps.
Mm-hmm.
Cool to be there for the Nelson Semedo song, since that's so new. I recently saw an anecdote come up somewhere, someone saying that they sit near the boxes where, like, Cunha's there because he's injured and whatever, and Semedo's family was in one, and his wife just like with tears, when his song's being sung. It's just like so nice, because I mean he Nelson Semedo's been divisive in the past, and maybe he'll continue to be divisive, but he's, like him or not, he's been a stalwart for several years now, and it's nice that he's getting recognized.
Yeah, that was the main, like one of the main comments I had to my buddy was like, they've been giving him shit for what is it,
Yeah.
3 years now. Like everyone has hated him for years, and now everyone like all of a sudden like realized that no, he's good. Like he's really good.
It's because
Just doesn't score
we're
goals.
far enough away from that price tag, I think.
Mhm.
And also I gotta ask, how dreamy was our Prince Adama to see in person?
Oh yeah, it was pretty dreamy.
I like new Adama hairstyle, by the way. It's good
It
stuff.
was
It
pretty
looked
cool.
really
Oh yeah, so
good.
when we were down on the pitch, I wasn't there when like everybody came out, but we did get to see Jose Sa come out. So we'd be like, Jose, and he was like, hey guys. He was pretty cool too.
That's awesome.
My wife was teasing me. Did you fanboy all over him? I was like, no, I was like 60 yards away, so only a little.
Only a little. All right. And finally, what's one piece of advice that you need to know if you're going over there for the first time?
The turnstiles are tiny, so be like have all your shit ready when you're like ready to get into the match. That was a big surprise. I was
So
like trying to
chunky
get
boys
into
like me could be in trouble.
it was narrow for me, and I'm like 5'11", 170.
Yeah, you're not fat like me. Uh-oh. No wonder Paul's been losing all this weight and looking sharp.
Just trying to get in the ground. No, it was a great experience. I would be curious what it would be like in the actual like North or South Bank, because we were on the side. Because I think Danny, you were mentioning it that they put the away fans in the kind of the long side because it's harder to get the songs going and stuff. So it was a little. The view was fantastic because it was like we're probably only like 20 rows out, so the view was really good right on the 18-yard box, but it was not quite as like pumping as it was on the either end. So if I were to go again, I'd be curious what it'd be like to be in the North or South Bank.
Well, I know I was living vicariously through you. I'm sure there were others as well. And glad you had a good time. Glad you got to see a win.
Yeah, me too.
Or at the first, we were like, hey, he got to see a goal.
Yeah.
It turned into a win. So thanks for sharing all that, Brian. And I'm sure he's got a lot of advice. So if anybody out there is going for the first time, wants some newcomer tips from a newcomer, he'd be a person to ask.
More than happy to.
No Stupid Questions is presented by Esfuerzo Wines. Located just north of Santa Barbara, California, Esfuerzo Wines showcases passion and 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. So whether you're celebrating a Wolves victory or winding down after a day at work, let Esfuerzo Wines transport you to the heart of California's wine country with every sip. For a limited time, head to esfuerzowines.com and use the promo code WOLVES for a 15% discount on your wine purchases. This message is intended for those of legal drinking age. Do not drink and drive. Excessive alcohol consumption may be harmful to your health. If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol abuse, please seek help. Esfuerzo Wines reminds you to enjoy their products responsibly and in moderation.
Okay, Alex, what do we got this week?
That's right. It's time for No Stupid Questions, brought to you by Esfuerzo Wines. Send us your questions each week on X at WLWpod is the show's handle, or you could do so via email. hello@wholelotofwolves.com is where you can reach us. So Todd DeWitt writes in with an important question. Do I need to find a cowboy hat to wear for FanFest? I know Josh would say yes. Paul, what do you think?
I think you got it. If you're in the capital of country music, then it's a must, surely. So you can definitely you can have it going around the top of your head as well when you're riding that bull on Friday night after a few beers. So
I will be wearing my cowboy hat. I will say that. So Todd, if you get one, you're not the only one. You can probably find a nice one at Nashville, I would reckon. Yeah, and you can say Brecken down there.
But do come wearing that on the Friday night. We will be Acme Feed and Seed on Broadway from around 6:30 p.m. Head to the second floor deck where the Wolves gear. Come and say hello. I'm sure there'll be a big group forming, and we'll have a few drinks, get to know each other. Then immediately after the game, we'll be heading back to that venue, live recording the next episode of Whole Lot of Wolves. So come and ask your No Stupid Questions in person.
This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we've mentioned on the show since Alex and I's plans firmed up, but we're officially in. I don't know if that's been said out on the airwaves, but
yeah, that's the Whole Lot of Wolves sleepover. Slumber party. Pillow fights for all of us.
But I did see today though that registration is actually closed, so they're not keeping it open at all. So if you haven't registered, you may struggle, but don't let that stop you from enjoying the festivities that we'll be hosting.
And that's it for No Stupid Questions this week. Thanks to our friends at Esfuerzo Wines, showcasing 3 generations of winemaking in every bottle. Head to esfuerzowines.com, use the promo code WOLVES, and get a 15% discount off of your wine order.
Okay, Brian, how can listeners get in touch with you to meet you up with Charlotte Wolves, or if they just want to know more about your experience out in Wolverhampton?
Probably easiest way is, let's see, we have Charlotte Wolves FC on Facebook as our Facebook group. You can look for me there, pretty active. They're also on Wolves USA group. And then we at Wolves Charlotte on Twitter, and recently added an Instagram. That was new for me. So at Wolves Charlotte on Instagram as well, and at Brian Donley 8 on Twitter as well.
Well, it's even worse going into an international break off the back of a result like Saturday, but hopefully it comes at a good time for the team, as they'll be back a week from Saturday for a prime time derby away against the Villa. So we will return around about this time next week with a dedicated preview show for that game. So in the meantime, we'll try and pick ourselves up, and we'll be walking around and speaking to people, and we'll tell them, up the mighty Wolves.